Welcome to our library studio here at the Yahowah blog. I'm here with our co-host, Mr. Wookie, who I think is just going to take a nap and chill here for a while. We're having a really good time returning to more translating and commenting on and deriving insights from Yahweh's testimony. Spent all weekend on it, and again the all day yesterday. And what we're finding is so fascinating that I'm actually now, having finished the 89th Mizmowr, which is what we're presenting here. I've made it to the end, which is verse 52. We're on going to review 16 and 17 before we move on today. And in it, we learn lots of insightful things. And by the time we've come to the end and realizing that we have come back to the 89th Psalm because of the fact that we were led to it by the final word picture. That would be Mashal 31. And in it, it's apparent that Dowd is given surrogate parents, that a woman who is referred to as his who is later called by Dowd Yahweh's Amma, his most productive mother, and is related to as the Ashar, comes in to speak to her son and a message that is recorded by her Baal husband. And in that, it's such a sweet picture of mother's love. And she is presented as, well, Dowd presents her as his mother, and not his birth mother. He hates his birth mother. And her husband is who he is being referred to in it. And it really just an empowering statement. And then we read how Dowd got into the position where he needed this intervention, as is presented in 2 Samuel. And then we went on to consider what Dowd's response to Yahowah was when Yahowah stopped communicating with him over the whole Bathsheba affair. That's presented in Psalm 51. It was one of the roughest occasions, very somber. In fact, I went to wearing black just to report it to you. And then we went to the 116th Mizmowr, which is glorious, which shows Dowd's recovery after he was met with by the Amma, his who is referred to as the Asherah or Ashar in this Mashal, this word picture. And we realized that wasn't enough to get him out of his stupor, but it certainly got his attention, and that the only thing that could have solved Dowd's issue, and it was delivered right at this time, is Ethan Ha-Izraki's contribution and collaboration with Yahowah in the writing of the 89th Psalm, which was then delivered to Dowd, and it served to resolve the conflict. And returned Dowd such that he restored his relationship with Yahowah, and the rest was made possible, such that he would return to fulfill Pesach Matzah and Bacharym in 33 CE. So it's a glorious, absolutely glorious story, the way that Yahowah used surrogate mother and father to restore the relationship he had with his Bacharym son. But once you put yourself in that mindset that God did this way, and that he did it through a person whose name describes the fact that he's been put in and out of the timeline on an ongoing basis, and he comes in with a wife, and as a result, he and she play major roles all the way through the timeline with Dowd. And the most fascinating about this is something I hinted at the I think the last show we did outside yesterday, or the one prior to that anyway, in the Ocean Studio, where I was given the insight that the man in the garden, the first human conceived by Yahowah with a neshama in addition to a nephesh, is the reason that Dowd is called the firstborn of God, and that individual, that soul, is Dowd's soul. And that I know how Chanuk came to know about Yahowah, why he was respected by Yahowah, how he earned Yahowah's favor, and his support for Dowd as Adam, as that man. And he had 300 years with him to support him as he struggled with the last 300 years of his life outside of the garden. But that would be the only way for Chanuk to actually learn about Yahowah. And no one else could have explained who he was. There was no Torah at the time. And so it was only Adam's, who was Dowd's, recollections of what took place in the garden. And then this man's natural empathy for him and his support for him is what earned God's respect. And we go from there, and you realize the other times that Chanuk is deployed all the way through the timeline, and where Dowd is deployed, and how the role that I have been asked to play throughout time exists for a singular reason: to support the firstborn Son of God. And that is the story of the lesser luminary in support of the greater luminary in the fourth day of creation. It's all the way through. It's always consistent. And it's quite the story. Once you figure out who is whom and why God needed to insert these certain people at this time, and then you go through the math and you recognize when they were born, when they were withdrawn, the whole thing just fits together like a perfect glove over an ideal hand. And you see the very hand of God intervening throughout the story to make certain that the important things take place exactly as they were designed. So that's what we're doing. And to do that now, just as I had finished the 89th Mizmowr and said, okay, I'm page like 700 of this book, we're really close to doing a final read through, and we'll make our edits and we'll get her published. I couldn't do that because I had to go back and flesh out whether I could validate my claim that Dowd was the man that God created in his image in the garden. And it was one affirmation after another. And at that point, I have to write it into the story. And then I realize, I need to go all the way back to the beginning and tell the story the way God tells it, with the greater and lesser luminaries being presented on the fourth day, and why they were, what their relationship is, and how that plays out through the rest of the Torah. It's a marvelous teaching experience. Again, I don't expect this to resonate with those outside of our covenant family. The malcontents that thought it would be a fun idea to send their letter out to 100 of my email contacts, will not be able to understand it, and that will inflame them all the more because, they need to condemn me to, in their view, to stay out of hell. Because if I'm right, and I am, that's where they're headed. So that's a desperate act. In fact, Rich, you told me that you thought it would be fun to give one of the AI the opportunity just to review their letter and say, what do you think of their translation, and what do you think of their argument? And
I should probably share it with the group because it just eviscerates that. And I did not use your translations. I let it do its own little translation first and walked it through our whole scenario. And it comes back and says the same thing you say.
Yeah.
They use Craig's translation style without Craig's translation discipline. Yeah. Cited a plural against an individual. Skipped the defining criterion of this periscope dreams. So they skipped that, misread an interrogative as a declarative, and then turned it against the man whose methodology they plagiarized to do so.
And they're plagiarizing me to condemn me, and they do a really lousy job of it. And of course, I don't want to belabor this because it's really irrelevant to the whole story, but they they have managed to do what Paul did. He found a word. He says, well, I can make my argument with Baal. And they have no idea that that God tells his story from beginning to end by giving you something at the beginning that he will come back to at the end. And he does that with Baal, which is used in the final word picture in an exceedingly favorable light. As a matter of fact, based upon the claims of Ezra, Ethan Ha-Ezraki, I wrote all but one of the mashal, so I ought to know what they say. And in it, Baal is the loving and supportive husband that has rallied around Dowd and is married to Dowd's mother, and supportive of Dowd's Amma, and his the one he calls Ashar. And it's just so interesting because we are coming full circle in that when Elia attacked not Ashar and Baal, but the prophets of Ashar, the religious interpretation of them, he will now come back celebrating who is Ashar and Baal as this beneficial woman and her loving husband. So it is God knows that every term that he has that has benefit, like Asher and Baal, will be twisted to use against him by satanic forces, and they have been all the way through. So it's all fascinating. And of course, when you finally understand the common denominator and how God works through this whole thing, all the pieces just fit together. I have shared them here with the family, and as we develop them a little further, I'll share them with you, and you just see the timing of who these people are that are involved in this soul, supporting this soul that is God's firstborn in Dowd, how they come to their positions and how it develops from there, and the timing of all these issues. You just go, oh my, it is all of the millennial markers. It is just breathtaking that it was all there all the time. And now we're prepared to see it, share it, understand it, enjoy it, relax in it. But what it requires is that we need to get off of normal posting on social media. We're here largely for the 8, and also for those who want to join us in support of the covenant family. But we're not here to solicit additional participation, and we're definitely here to put a kibosh on those who would claim that they're going to be part of the harvest, that there is not one chance in hell that they're going to participate in. So we just need to continue to reestablish the fences of the sheepfold that Yahowah established around Dowd, so that that which has been torn down is put back in place. We're not here to attract lots of people. We're here to deflect them and to get into Shabuah and then to Teruah with the right people in the right place, doing the right things that are properly educated and prepared to be right about all of this, so that we can fulfill our responsibilities going forward. And that is the job, and we can do that best at yahowah.com, supported by places like YouTube and Rumble and the like. But I need to personally disengage. I lost a challenge today on X. It was just amazing. There are a lot of X posts condemning Jews, saying it's okay to condemn Jews. It's okay to demonize Jews because Revelation, they claim that they're referred to as the synagogue of Satan, and that is the interpretation of Revelation and the synagogue of Satan because, well, the New Testament is exceedingly anti-Semitic. So Christians, not knowing that the whole thing is a farce, justify condemning and even killing Jews based upon the references to the synagogue of Satan. And on 2 of those posts, I challenged that and said it's not true. Synagogue of Satan is actually a reference because it's ascribed to John, who was condemned by Paul, and so the person that went into the synagogues who admitted that he was demon possessed was Paul, and that it is not a justification to attack Jews. So I was criticizing the anti-Semitic hate that is derived from the synagogue of Satan against posts that had promoted it, and explained that to X, and X says, no, we're going to withhold our conclusion. You're in violation of our standards. So when you're dealing with AI that are that immoral, that irrational, that overly stupid, I'm sorry, I don't belong there. I'm not going to spend time there. And the same thing is true with Facebook, and Facebook has gotten to be more egregious even than X. But with the 2 of them like this, it's let's communicate, let's interact at yahowah.com. We have all the support mechanism there. It's a marvelous site, and there's no reason for us to be anywhere else other than these videos need to stream on other platforms, particularly on YouTube and places like Rumble where they're pretty impervious. So we'll continue in that regard. But it's been really, really, really interesting, and I think that those who are solidly in the covenant, mature grain, looking forward to continuing to grow. You're part of the 8 that are mentioned at Shavuot, Teruah, and Sukkah. You're among the 8 that are designated by the 8 souls that were aboard the ark that reestablished the covenant and really populated the world of neshama man around the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the Black Sea, and that area, the cradle of civilization. So it is a marvelous opportunity, and we are learning at a prodigious rate. So, what I'm doing, I've gone back to the very beginning of this book that I'm sharing from you. It's one of the things that I learned is that, Yahowah said, I want you to talk to my people. Okay, well, we're doing that. And it's turned out beautifully. It's really a fun way to be able to share what we're learning in real time. And the idea was that, if you're to go back and keep on what you're doing, which is correct the books every time you find something new, well, it takes you a better part of a year to run through all the books because there's 25,000 pages, even if you're making just corrections in them. And if you just put one more book on the shelf, no marginal utility there. So what we're doing now is I spend 3/4 of my day translating, interpreting, learning, and drawing conclusions that then become part of these programs. So I'm writing for these programs with the realization that the last book in the Yahowah series, Volume 9, Time of Trouble, is then published as part of what we shared in those programs. And the same thing is true with this, which is the 4th volume now of Coming Home, which is being renamed after the introduction of these characters, Mizmowr, the illustrious luminaries that are so essential to God's story. So that's where we are, and we'll continue. This rendition of the 89th Mizmowr, our last reference was to Psalm 89, 16, and 17. Let me reprise that for you. It says, in your name, and I must say that so that you know the context, what has happened is that as the Zeroah, I have now been deployed to eliminate Rahab. And it's a very interesting manner of elimination. I actually stand down. I allow him to kill my physical body in a brutal way. And as somebody who spent 3.5 years speaking for Yahowah and defending Yisrael, supporting Yisrael from the Temple Mount, to allow the rival that I have spoken against, Rahab, who is Satan, in the body of Donald Trump, and for them to now realize that he was the problem all along, and that their advocate was this man that he is specifically going, because they have watched all of this, and everybody, including Rahab, have tried to eviscerate me, tried to kill me, and it never works. And so I actually tell everybody, I said, this is going to happen on this day. Sun's going to rise on this day. I'm going to summon him and his minions, and they're going to brutalize me. And you're going to watch this happen. And then you're going to see what Elia and Yahowah do with the sacrifice of my body. You need to know my soul's fine, but we're going to do this just as Dowd served as his body served as the Passover lamb. We're going to do this. And I just want you to see that this is all he's got. He's got death and destruction. And by his lashing out, it'll be his end. At that point, his Ruach spirit and Donald Trump and Satan go to Sheol, and my nephesh soul returns to stand beside Dowd and Yahowah. So it reads, in your name at this time, they will continually rejoice. They will celebrate these favorable circumstances, expressing their enthusiasm. And they will do so every day. And that'll be a lot of days. There'll be 1,000 years of 365 and a quarter days a year. That's a long time to be celebrating. And it was written in the call imperfect, paragogic, enthusiastically, genuinely, and on an ongoing basis, celebrating kol hayam, all of the time. And in your vindication and that which is right about you, basadaka, ata, by being correct, fair, and right, just, acquitting, accurate, and honest, they are lifted up on high, enriched, and empowered, because that is the key. Are you right about God or not? That was 89:16. Indeed, you are the empowering nature of their beautiful adornment and the fortifying aspect of their majestic splendor. The covenant members are going to be glorious, magnificent at this time, and the remnant of Israel are also going to be beautifully adorned. I mean, they're going to be prepared to meet God and their king on their return. And so it's just going to be a marvelous spectacle where everyone is either beautifully attired with attractive clothing that the seamstress of God will have provided for everyone. It's quite a production order that you're going to have, Miss Leah. I hope you're up to it. And those who are covenant, well, they're going to be draped in light. So, in fact, if you look at a lot of Leah's invites, the gowns worn by the women are made of starlight. And so she's already working on her their thoughts as to how we're going to be adorned. Oh my, I'm going back to clues that affirm that Dowd was Adam. And so I'm smiling when I realize that comment at the end where he was naked and was not wrong and was not ashamed, how it applies to an aspect of Dowd's life, but meant really nothing to the conditions that were taking place, the situation in the garden at that time, but absolutely served as a prophetic entree into a very, very important time in Dowd's life, and how also that you should leave your mother and father. Well, they didn't have mothers and fathers, so what in the world were they talking about? Well, they're talking about Dowd and the third life, where he is the shepherd boy who had really, really crappy mother and father, and then left them to be embraced by his surrogate mother and father, who, as we're going to find out, are a lot more than just his surrogate mother and father.
Sounds to me like you're going to have to reset and start over with this last book.
Well, no, well, yeah, I am. I've renamed it, and I'm starting back over, because the whole book was written to show the what God had to say about the two most influential characters in his story. and how he introduces them, and then how they're presented. And so that was the purpose of the book. It's just that as I wrote the book, I learned so much more about the subject of the book. Isn't that what you're supposed to do?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm now going back and rewriting it based upon all I've learned about the subject of the book, both of us, and our relationship to one another. Because it turns out I've had many lives over a very long period of time, and my lives were always focused on support of Dowd and the covenant. So indeed, you are the empowering nature of the beautiful adornment and their fortifying aspect of the majestic splendor. By your will, your acceptance and favor, our brilliant trumpet and horn, which is symbolic of our status and our king, Karen, will be raised on high, lifted up, and increased. That's 89:17. There's numbers of reasons I had to integrate this. First of all, having written the last mashal, the 31st proverb, I knew that the theme that ran through it was that of Dowd's mother, surrogate mother in this case, at this particular time, being the fashion coordinator and seamstress for forevermore. And so I'm going to talk about adornment because it's really fresh in my mind. And I'm also going to talk about Karen, because Karen, brought up here in the 89th Mizmowr, is part of the essential equation of finding common denominators that take us from knowledge to understanding. And Karen is that key from here, talking about the status of our king, Karen, this brilliant trumpet and horn, is because when Abraham and Yishak went up Mount Moriah to confirm the covenant, and when God said, "Don't take the life of your only son, the son that you love," he said that he would provide the lamb, which means that that lamb would be his firstborn son, the son that he loves. And that lamb had its Karen caught in the thickets. And so this is my way of telling Dowd we're going to have a discussion, because as soon as the ink was dry on this, I went directly to Dowd, who I knew quite well at the time, and said, we're going to start here, or very early in this, we're only in the 17th statement. We're going to trace down Karen. You're going to understand the role that Karen plays in affirming that you're that guy. So that is why it's important here. And it says that the Karen will be raised on high, will be lifted up and increased room. So for our gift of deliverance and protective covering, they're in accord with Yahowah, and on behalf of the Kodesh, the set apart one of Yisrael. So I'm making the connection from this beautiful adornment that is being provided by his surrogate mother in this case, and the Karen that is symbolic of his crown, his sovereignty, his kingship, and of the trumpet for Shabuah and Teruah that pulled together the team to usher in his return, that this is also symbolic of him serving as the Passover lamb. And the Passover lamb is our gift of deliverance. And the garments are part of that protective covering. And we receive it after Dowd removes our guilt and takes it into Sheol on Matzah. We replace our physical bodies with light and energy. And they're all in accord with Yahowah, and were accomplished based upon both Yahowah as God and Dowd as king being the set apart one, the most distinct of Yisrael, of those who engage and endure with God, our Melech king. It's Dowd, only Dowd. It's Mizmowr lyrics to sing. Psalm 89, 18. Just incredibly disciplined in diving down and detailing what can be learned from specific words and how each word serves as a marker, not only in time, but as a signpost that helps us know the way to travel through God's story. And Karen is one of those words. Melech is another one of them. Being gloriously adorned is part of that story. And speaking of markers in time, that is what Oz means, as a marker in time. And in the realization and in relation to this, Oz, meanwhile, it stands to reason that logically, you have spoken. I'm speaking to God. You have spoken. In a prophetic declaration that can be seen and experienced through your Bacharym. Bacharym is a really interesting word. And the thing that is important here is to know that it is not Bacharym in the Masoretic text. The Masoretic text has chastity, which means faithful and devoted ones. But Bacharym is an entirely different word. And Bacharym fits here so beautifully because what we learned from the garden and have seen resonate all the way through the story, including the mature grain that is ready for the shawah harvest, is that the purpose of our existence is to demonstrate to God that we are observant, that we are thoughtful, that we are responsive to him, and that we are reliable, that he can test us and find us approved, try us and examine us, find us acceptable, assess us, because we're here to complete the job. And particularly now as we realize how God has orchestrated this entire story from beginning to end in such a loving and compassionate way, and such a consistent manner, we know exactly what it means to be Bacharym. The Bacharym are chosen, tested, and approved ones. The ones you select and have examined. The ones you prefer and have found acceptable. The ones you have assessed, and as a result of that assessment, desire. Marvelous, isn't it? With you saying, I can remain in place because I have put in place, arranged and granted a degree of equality, fitting the circumstances, to those who can smooth things out and resolve the conflicts, thereby achieving a reasonable resolution, making things right, achieving that which is agreeable when deploying those who are appropriate for that situation and who can provide what's needed, serving satisfactorily to remove obstructions so as to engender a suitable result. Shawah. I have patiently deployed implements, arranged as likenesses, setting those who are agreeable and comparable up as those who are affable to me, analogous and similar to me, an analog, if you will, of me, being productive while I anticipate a favorable and satisfactory outcome, encouraging comparisons while eliminating impediments as well as bumps in the way, obstructions, as they are adequate for me to remain still and silent as I bestow them as a gift born of devotion, of mutual interest, and of desire. Peel perfect, first person singular. Now, this is really interesting. This is a transition in this text. It has gone from Ethan Ha Ezraki being the voice speaking to Yahowah, sharing what he knows about God, his integrity, his affability, his approachability, his love, his devotion, his trustworthiness. And also he is explaining how Yahweh is going to use him. He knows what his role is going to be in the future. He's a prophet after all. And then you see Yahweh intervene and make a declarative statement. I think it's in the third and fourth statements, very early on, saying, Dowd's the one. It was through Dowd that I established the covenant. By the way, that's everything. And the only way you establish the covenant is to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bacharym, which we have proven. So he's announcing Dowd fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bacharym, which means that we prevailed in our meeting with him. He did what he needed to do. As a result, the opportunity to become part of the covenant is possible without that meeting, without this song, without this result. Pesach, Matzah, and Bacharym are not fulfilled. They're not fulfilled by Dowd. There is no access to God or to the covenant. So it was a big deal. And at this point, I then go on and explain all of these things, including the annihilation of Rahab. And at that point, God speaks again. And he will continue to speak in first person for a very long time. I think we go all the way through the mid to late 40s in terms of chapters in this song. So it has turned to God's voice. So as a marker in time in relationship to this, I'm saying you have spoken and you have shared a prophetic revelation that can be seen and experienced through your Bacharym, those that you have chosen, that you have tested, and that you have approved. And quite frankly, there's not a lot of them. It really isn't. The two that are the most important are the greater and lesser luminary, designated in the fourth epoch of creation. They are represented as the tree of lives. One of them is actually the greater luminary. The firstborn is actually Adam. And then God found that there was a man that supported him in his last 300 years, got to know him, and that was the first interaction between the two of them. But it's also apparent that there's a woman that's involved in all of this. Dowd did not pick very well in terms of women. He's going to need the Leah dating service to do a better job in this regard. But I seem to have found a woman that I dearly love and made a deal with God. It's one of those deals that you cut with God where you say, okay, God, I'll do what you want. I'll come in and out of the timeline. I'll be the fixer. But, I don't want to do it alone. I really love this woman. I want her to come with me so that, it's the two of us working together. And God, of course, said, boy, that's a tough call. Let me see. Can I arrange that? Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Now that you asked for it, sure. Of course, that was what he wanted to do all along. But nonetheless, I'm quite confident I asked for it. And so she is one of these chosen, tested, and approved ones. By the way, none of this adds any brownie points. It just means that God made sure that his story was going to play out in accordance to plan, so that the covenant would be accessible, that Dowd would see it all the way through, complete the mission, and we would celebrate his return on Yom Kippurim as we move through the timeline that these next harvests would occur. He was just trying to keep his people and and time schedule in place. And this is just how he went about doing it. So he has your Bacharym, chosen, tested, and approved ones. This is the essence of my life. I know it at the time. It's not my first existence was as Enoch. Chanuk is the correct pronunciation of it. And I came to know Yahowah through Dowd as Adam. He would be the only person that knew him. And I was fascinated by what he had to say about their time in the garden and what he had shared about Yahowah. And I knew that this was a depressing time for Dowd. That last third of his life, just as in his life as king, the last third was rough for him. And I had compassion for the man, as did my wife, and we supported him. That's how we earned God's trust. Now, what happened from there, it becomes really interesting. But we'll talk about how I know this whole role as one of your Bacharym, your chosen, tested, and approved ones. With you saying, now, with you saying, comma, quotation mark, guess what? From this point on, Yahowah also has a propensity to be verbose. I'm not the only one that can talk your ear off. Now we're in the 17th verse. Is that where we are? Very close to it, maybe the 18th verse. But from this point on, it is Yahowah and all Yahowah. I will sum up the psalm in the end, but we're only like a half a dozen verses from the end where I say, okay, thank you, God. In closing, here it is. But the matter of fact, this is now in God's voice. So what is God saying? I introduced the concept of your of working through your chosen and tested ones. And God says, yep, I can remain in place. This is the whole story, folks. If you can appreciate this translation, and it's a fully amplified translation of shawah and what it means, then you're going to understand what I have learned, what I'm trying to share with you as to how God has chosen certain individuals that he has developed a confidence in, that he knows will see it through. And they have different roles. One serves mostly as a father. One serves mostly as a mother. They happen to be husband and wife. And their primary focus is to assist, to guide, to uplift, to support, to nurture, to encourage the firstborn of Yahowah, such that the covenant occurs when and where God says. So God says, I can remain in place. I've got a couple of guys. I can remain in place because I have put in place. I have arranged and I have granted a degree of even equality, fitting the circumstance anyway, to those who can smooth things out and resolve conflicts, not conflicts with people being religious, not conflicts with people being political or the terrorists during the Nephilim period. No, we need to smooth things out and resolve the conflicts that occur between father and son. Because the son, the firstborn, well, he was cerebral, but also emotional. And he had some outbursts, and he had been, listen to what he said on the way out of the garden. No, not my fault, man. It's your fault. You gave me that woman. It's her fault. She gave it to me. Not my fault. So when you read like the 51st Mizmowr, that's how I went direct and I said, oh my God, I've read this before. Yeah, indeed. So God says, I can remain in place. Is in Shamayim. It's nicer there than it is here on earth, because I have put in place, I have arranged and granted a degree of equality fitting the circumstances to those who can smooth things out and resolve conflicts, thereby achieving a reasonable resolution. making things right, achieving that which is agreeable, when deploying those who are appropriate for the situation and who can provide what's needed, serving satisfactorily to remove obstructions so as to engender a suitable result, assisting by supplying whatever is needed to strengthen, to serve, to help, and to enable. Ezer. Serving as a resource to aid, encourage, succor, and support over and on behalf of the gibowr. It's up there for you to read. I'm sure you came to it. Who is he supporting? Who is he strengthening? According to God, he had somebody that he deployed so that he could remain in Shamaim, that he had every confidence would resolve the situation on behalf of, over and on behalf of, the gibowr, the courageous and capable man, the man with confidence and fortitude, so he would prevail. The mightiest of men, the strong and effective defender, the valiant and brave one who battles. That's it, folks. I hope that you are able to follow along. I know that there are covenant members who are absolutely mature enough in your understanding that you listen to something like that and you say, what a thrill it is for us to be included in this. Because when it comes to Shabuah, Teruah, and Sukkah, as well as to the ark, there are 8 that are essential. And that 8 that's just the lead in this pack. Because there are so many more that are essential to working and supporting with them. We are developing a tested and examined family on behalf of the man that God chose to serve as king. And we're here to make it such that he is supported, he is loved, he is enabled. So he says, I will rise up and exalt Bacharym, the one I have examined, tested, and approved, the man I have specifically chosen and appointed after careful consideration, the one I have decided to engage in a special relationship with, Bacharym. By the way, the other thing that just was stunning to me is you go through and you look at all the various situations of all the characters and what God said about them. And when Dowd is 8 years old, he's down there in Bethlehem. He's abandoned by his mother, abandoned by his father. Nobody knows anything about him. He was an afterthought on all of this. And God says, that's the guy. I'm choosing him. And I make my criterion differently than do men. He knew him. He knew him well. And at 8 years old, we don't prove anything. We're still children. They had been together. I can and will name the occurrences, and it was far more than just in the garden. So he's going to exalt the one that he has examined, that he has tested, that he has approved, the man that he has specifically chosen and appointed after careful consideration, the one he has decided to engage in a special relationship with, the Bacharym, who is from and for the people. Mizmowr lurks to sing, Psalm 89:19. Now, I want to remind everybody that there is an aspect of this that can be easily misconstrued. This says from the people. Yeah, we're just people. People could be family. People could be related as kin. People could be a reference to Yisrael. People could, can be any one of those things. Sometimes it's even related to a nation. I think here it's double. But the fact is that there really is only a very tenuous tie to DNA ethnicity here. I've shared this with you before, but Adam was not a Jew, was not a Israelite, nor was Shawah, nor were their sons and daughters, nor was Chinook, and Yahowah found him to be tested and true. The same thing would be said for Noach, who was Enoch's great grandson, and maybe a little more than that. They weren't Jews. And then we go, and forward in time to Abraham. It's interesting, by the way, that the Noach would live right to the day that Abraham and Yishak went up Mount Moriah to affirm the covenant. He saw that through. Just saying. Year 2000, yeah. Huh? He was taken just shy of year 1000, yeah. Yep, interesting. Anyway, Abraham and Sarah, they were not Jews. But you know what they were? They were descendants, the neshama descendants of Noach and his wife, and of their sons, particularly Shem. That they were. Because while the world wasn't flooded, the area of humans with a neshama was, and that was repopulated by Noach and his sons and their wives. And so they weren't Jews, but they were descendants of Noach and his wife. And so you'll find it interesting to know who Noach actually was, because there was no chance that somebody was going to know Yahowah. None. Why? Because you had Dowd was the only access to Yahowah, not Dowd as Adam was the only access to Yahowah. He was gone. Enoch learned from Dowd, but he was now gone. Even Adam's son, born outside the garden, he was gone. Seth, he was gone too. There's no way. No Torah. Couldn't be done. Unless we follow this and say, well, God has chosen and tested the individuals that he deploys so that he can get the job done. So we'll find out who Noah really is, and maybe even who Shem is, and why it matters. So anyway, this is a profoundly important moment in time. Yahowah spoke through Ethan Ha-Izraki about his plan to restore, to deploy, and honor his beloved son. His revelation would be tangible, visible, perceptible, because it could be seen in real life. The two Bacharym, previously evaluated and acceptable individuals, a man and a woman, a husband and wife, a father and mother, would convey God's words to a king. All three were part of this at that time. That's the whole story. That's why we're still calling this series the Last Word Picture, because it brought us to this place with a mother restoring the king beside her husband, Baal, such that the 89th Mizmowr would be written to complete the job. So as a result of Bacharym, we should recognize that life is a test for all of us, an opportunity for us to prove ourselves to God. And even though he isn't expecting a whole lot from us, fewer than 1 in a million pass muster. To earn Yahweh's trust and to be included among the Bacharym, the chosen and tested ones, we must be observant, we must be responsive, and we must be reliable. And I would define observant the way that I translate shamar: closely examine and carefully consider. And then what you find is that when Yahweh is describing all of this, he will tell us through oath. You remember that word oath that I brought up so many times, where we're told that the greater and lesser luminaries serve as an oath to the Moedim, these restoring witnesses to the eternal testimony that are the 7 appointments with Yah each year. And it's rendered in English Bibles deduced to nothing but sign. Now, that's not its verbal root. No. Its verbal root is written the same way in the Hebrew. And it means to be willing, to be responsive, to consent, to have been asked to do something, and to show a willingness to get it done. That's what the oath actually are. They are the responsive ones. We get right back to it all over again. The qualification for working with Yahowah is responding to him. So there are chosen and tested ones that are observant, responsive, and reliable, at least to the extent God is comfortable with us accompanying him into the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th dimension. We have to demonstrate that we are observant, responsive, and reliable to the extent that God says, yep, I am willing to empower this soul, knowing that they're going to become immortal, and I'm going to give them access to the entire universe and access to come into Shamaim and to be part of my family, communicating with me and all of the other covenant members forever. For him to make that call and to say yes to that, there is no secret little formula where you can say, okay, I'll accept the 5 conditions of the covenant, I'll attend the Moed Mikri, I'm in, right? No, you're not in. You have to continually be observant, which means closely examine and carefully consider, responsive, and reliable. In this regard, we are being Bashar, examined and approved, right here, right now, scrutinized and verified, in the process of being found acceptable and desirable. It is an open invitation with your life serving as the audition. Now, I'm going to be really bold in making a statement here. I've been tested over the last 5,400 years. So has Leah. Every time God needed resolution, particularly with Dowd or with the covenant, we were placed in position to find that resolution. I've been there, I've done it. So has Leah. We aren't auditioning anymore. But everybody who was part of this team, who was part of this family, who was going to be part of the Shavuot harvest, you are. I'm not saying that to encourage more dedication, because the fact is, the team that is really solid and contributing to this family has demonstrated overwhelmingly that they belong. But I just want you to know that we need to see it through. We need to stay true to our calling and our responsibility. We need to continue to prepare, to learn, to be better equipped to fulfill the mission, because we are just starting, folks. We got another 1,000 years to go, 1,000 plus 7 to go. So I want everyone to recognize that your life now serves as an addition. Therefore, while that is a marvelous, I think, affirmation of the understanding of what happened in Eden and what went right and wrong, and that is consistent with what I previously deduced and conveyed, and it serves as a confirmation of why God is allowing a remnant back into the garden during the millennial celebration of Sukkah. This insight, I think, even pales in comparison to what can be deduced from that magical term, shawah. What a word. And it is especially so when conveyed in God's voice, which it was, first verb, now conveyed in God's voice, and in this context where it leads to enabling the gibowr as the ultimate Bacharym. I think you know, I have been translating and commenting on Yahowah's testimony for a quarter century, well, in this life. And this is one of the most revealing statements I've encountered in all of that time. It is the grand unification. It's the unifying thread that has been woven throughout God's tapestry. It depicts how, when, who, and why Yahowah deployed in support of his Son so that we might live and become God's children too. Well, everyone listening to these words, except 2 individuals, they aren't Dowd's children. They have been God's children for a long time. Dowd is actually their son. 3 times. 3. From this point and through the next 18 statements, and it's far more than 18. I just counted up to 18 and came back to this point. We're just shy of the 20th verse, and we're going to get through the mid 40s. So more like 28 statements. Yahowah's going to share with us in his own words. He's going to talk about his relationship to Dowd, presenting him as the cornerstone of his plans and as the exemplar among his people. And so I think that this transition from Ethan speaking to us about Yahowah and Dowd and everything that we're going to do together, to Yahowah speaking of Dowd and how it pivots upon shawah, this magnificent verb, and the Bacharym to enable gibowr. That's just incredibly sweet. So, my friends, we're going to end this program here because, my mind is racing and I'm having such a delightful time thinking of all of the things that I can develop and share with you. So we'll return to this place in our next episode. I hope that with the weather being a little blustery outside, that we will come back to this studio before the day is out. So thank you so much for listening. I know that I have taken you to a place that you probably never thought God's words would lead to, but rest assured, it is comforting. It is enriching. It is affirming. And indeed, loving and compassionate what God has done. So thank you. May God bless. See you later today.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in. That was Fetch. Gotta run now. Catch Yao on our next podcast.